high standoff, and our next presentation is to be delivered to us by President and Founder of TraceLab organization, Robert Sal, is talking to us about the art of the bridge.
Hello, everyone. Well, if you're watching this video, it probably means I wasn't able to present to you in person, which is a shame, but hopefully you get a lot of educational value from this presentation nevertheless. And I hope it's a great conference as well. I hope you have a lot of fun. I know there's probably a lot of great talks. All right, so let's get started. This presentation is called The Art of the Breach, and this is a presentation that I've wanted to do for a very long time. I have this weird thing where when I walk down the street and I look at buildings, I'm quite often doing an analysis of the building from a security point of view. And maybe that's just because of the industry that we're in. But then I think it's also, for me, it's a bit of a hobby as well. And I like to look at certain things from a physical security point of view and look at these three different areas as far as passive entry, covert entry, and then of course, forced entry. And that's where this presentation is going to be different than all of the other physical security presentations you've probably seen or books you've read or things like that. So I'm going to introduce myself and get into that in a little more detail. But the forced entry component is really, I think, fascinating. And really that's from the perspective of a first responder and a criminal. I mean, this is quite often what they will do. Criminals are not usually very sophisticated. It's usually crimes of opportunity. So if they see something through the window, they may not try to break the lock. They may just break the window and just go directly in. So it's a very brute force type of attack. It doesn't usually take a lot of time. It's usually quick and easy. Unfortunately, it's usually quite loud and breaks stuff as well. But that's the added component to this. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go all the way from sidewalk to executive filing cabinet. So we're going to make our way through the building and show you all the different ways that we could get from point A to point B using these three different approaches. Okay. And let's see. There we go. All right, a little bit about myself. So I am the founder and president of the nonprofit organization called TraceLabs. That's been in existence for a few years now. We have a fantastic team now, very talented team of people that are now working with me on that and really driving it forward like I never could have done on my own. So we've got a great core team, great executive, and we've got a fantastic community of hundreds of people that have come and joined us. We're doing monthly global CTFs. So if you've got an opportunity, take a look for that. It's becoming very popular. We're doing a lot of good work for the community and hopefully revolutionizing the way that missing persons are found today. So really exciting stuff. On a professional level, I am a senior IT manager. I know that sounds very vague, but I do a lot of different stuff in that capacity. It's very exciting for me. And then also, I think more relevant to this presentation is I am a licensed tracker in search and rescue. So I've been doing search and rescue for over a decade now. There's some pictures down there below, a couple there of me doing that. One I'm in the helicopter, one I'm in the UTV there in both of those corners. And that's a lot of fun. So I get to do jet boats, I get to go in helicopters. But one of my favorite things is tracking a subject through the forest and looking for those identifiers and that sign to actually catch up with them and then hopefully help them. And then, of course, if you want to reach me, you please do so. That's my Twitter, that's my email. Those are probably the two best ways to reach me. I really appreciate any sort of feedback on the presentation, what you liked, what you didn't like. And, you know, I always try to improve it. Usually I give these talks several times throughout a year or two, and I like to change it up every time and make it better and refine it. So love the feedback. Thank you very much. All right, so some housekeeping. We need to do this before I get started just to cover all our bases here. Standard disclaimer, right? So none of the material that I'm going to present here today in no way represents an employer, either past, present, future. So I need to cover that. And it's really just my own opinions. Quite often I'm wrong. I'll admit that. But, and feel free to disagree with me at any point. I often will go back and make corrections. Also, risk of incarceration. please, I'm going to present to you a bunch of things that could be used in a really bad way to commit crime. So please don't do that. Please don't utilize this to do really bad things. Please utilize the information that you get here today to be able to better safeguard your business, your home, any sort of physical building that you value, right? This should be used from a good guy's point of view, just to know what bad guys could do. And I'm utilizing my first responder knowledge because in my search and rescue, I'm friends with a lot of law enforcement and firemen and things like that, where we discuss how you would move into a building, right? So some of this knowledge is taken from there. I've consulted with private contractors that do this sort of work as well, that show me how they would get into a building very quickly. And so a lot of it is taken from that. This is taken from legitimate sources that show how to do that on the forced entry very quickly and efficiently. So how good would criminals be with that? Well, not great, of course, but they will utilize some of the same techniques, of course, right? So that's what this is all about, to show you the art of the breach from all three areas, but a lot of it's going to show you the brute force entry side of it, just because I think that's something we don't talk about a lot in InfoSec. And hopefully that will help you develop a more rounded defense. Okay, so this is what we're going to do today. We're going to go through all these 8 kind of levels. And this really simulates an attack that an attacker would look at. Now, this is fairly sophisticated, right? Because we're going through all these different levels. An attacker may skip a bunch of these steps to their detriment quite often. But these are the things that I would expect a seasoned professional attacker on your physical presence to do, right? To look at these things. And some, of course, are more time consuming than others. But basically, we want to move from point 1 all the way to point 8. And I've mapped some of those on the map here so you can kind of see where we would be when we're doing that on this cutaway of a building. So let's get started. All right, so first thing we want to do is research the target, right? We want to do that passive reconnaissance, zero-touch recon, like we call it in Trace Labs. The reason for that is we don't want to alert anybody that we're actually looking at their stuff. We don't want to show anybody that what we're doing. And we want to start at a very high level and work our way down. Basic OSINT stuff, right, is what we want to start doing. But before we do that, we want to set up our platform to be in a good position, right? So what I would always recommend for people is have that dedicated VM. If you're doing ongoing OSINT operations, of course, this is very handy to start off from a fresh VM with all your tools configured, everything ready to go, no cross-contamination, no extra data on there. Because if you need to take that and give it to somebody, perhaps in law enforcement or whatever like that, you're able to do that, not worry about, oh, I wonder if all my songs are on there, or I wonder if that last case is also on there. There's none of that, right? So that's very good. Also, it allows you to archive those VMs. So that's very convenient as well. You may want to have some sock puppets set up, right? Some alternate accounts. Those take time to develop and nurture and grow. So you need to save time for that. You also want to make sure all your apps and your plugins and everything are correctly set up. So that's something else you want to do. Also, VPN. And I know I'm probably preaching to the choir to talk about a VPN. But in this case, the VPN is not just for privacy, but is also for location. What does that mean? What I mean by that is that we may want to show up coming from somewhere else. Maybe it's within a certain country. Maybe there's certain restrictions within that country. Things like that. So it is for privacy, but also when you're doing OSINT, it's really nice to be able to appear from somewhere that you're not. And then finally, how are you going to organize this intelligence? So again, back to OSINT basics. What are you going to do with this information? How are you going to organize it? And not just because you might give it to somebody else, but just so that you can make sense of your own research, right? I'm historically not good at keeping organized. I work at that very hard to try to keep myself organized. I've learned from some very smart people how to do that a lot better than I used to. But it's a mess if you're not organized. And so then you waste a lot of time going back, looking for stuff. Did I already find that or not? Is this new or is this old? Right? So having a system, whatever works for you. I don't really advocate a tool or a particular framework, but what I would say is find something that works for you. If that's a notepad and a pencil, then so be it. But there's a lot of options. Maybe just use Excel or some great tools out there. that you can use. Hunchly is a great tool. I always like to talk about that, a fellow Canadian. So take a look and see what you want to use and get yourself set up before you start operations. All right, now we're going to continue researching the target now that we're kind of getting more set up. But now we're going to become more active now that we've got our platform set up, our tools and our systems set up. We want to understand their business, right? So we are trying to breach a physical building. And so we want to know, okay, what type of business is this? Is this a government business? Is this private business? Is this a big business? Is this a small business? Is this a startup, right? What level of security are we getting into here? What projects are they doing? What products, what services? That's important, right? Because it's going to have a different culture, different feel, a different style of entry. What's the population? Are we dealing with a lot of people? Is it all executives? Maybe it's a satellite office. Go hunting for social butterflies. When you're doing your OSINT, of course, I always talk about social butterflies. You know, it's the 80-20 rule. Those 20% of the people, or usually less, usually it's like 5% of the population of the company of the employees is going to give you 80% of what you're looking for. So find those people and mine them for all the data that you can get. You want to learn about their departments, what departments are actually in that building. Is it a strictly finance department and they own the whole building? Or is it a mix of everybody, right? So you could, you know, this is going to help you for your pretext when you're in there. If someone says, well, who are you? Oh, I'm with the marketing department. There is no marketing department here. And then you're screwed, right? So you want to be able to learn about that. Vendors, if you're going to have a pretext as coming in as a vendor, which I often would recommend, you know, well, what vendors do they use? So that's very important to try to figure that out. Lots of opportunities there. Everybody uses vendors. Everything from document shredding, plant care, you know, maybe they have a gym, maybe they have a cafeteria, maybe they have parking services, maybe they have HVAC, right? Like it just goes on and on and on. You know, delivery of whatever. So those are good things to know, though, before you get started. Now, also, understanding their infrastructure. And this one often goes a little bit overlooked, but I think you really should spend enough time on this because this is going to give you a lot of gems as far as how the business functions and some of that, you know, great underlying content for pretext, right? Start off with the easy stuff: internet provider, parking, property management. Property management can be a gold mine if you find the right stuff. So I highly recommend taking a look for that. They probably lease the building, so find out who they lease it from, find out who else is in the building. Maybe it's multi-tenant. Floor plans, if you're in the building and you know the floor plans beforehand, that's going to really help you out a lot. If your floor plans are available to the public, that could be something you may want to change. First responder key boxes. I'm going to talk about that in a couple more, in a little bit. And I got a few slides dedicated to that. That's a big one. Most buildings will have that. It's just a matter of knowing where they are. Cafeteria or gym, of course, those are really good ones to know about. The HVAC, that's the cooling, which is often on the roof. And then your ingress egress points. So where am I going to come in and where am I going to get out? Loading docks are excellent because especially if they're busy, quite chaotic. Coming in from a loading dock may be a little more tricky than getting out from a loading dock because getting out's a little faster usually. Magnetic locks, what happens when there's a power outage? Do doors fail secure or do they fail open? What does that look like? Perimeter layers, right? So how's their perimeter layered? So if you want to get out, what's that look like? Fences, walls, man traps, train traps, CCTV cameras, right? What does that look like? So as a defense team, do you have that layered security? Because as people come and they start to case your building and they're doing their research phase, the more of those layers that they see, the better. And so I would try to make some of those very visible to people so they just move on to the next building. Things like fences, because they're going to hold you up. You can't get through the fence without doing something, perhaps, right? The man traps, those are great as well, where you're actually stuck in an area for an amount of time, and maybe you have to do something actually to get out. Things like that. Train traps is from SAR, and typically what that is, especially in avalanche terrain, that's an area where you're kind of funneled into a bad spot that you don't want to be. And as an attacker, that could be, say, when you go into reception. You're kind of funneled in and you're brought past reception, and reception is going to talk to you before you can move forward. That's what I would call like a train trap. Those are great. I think if you're designing a building to be secure, you want to have a lot of those. You want to have some central ingress egress points that are very well monitored, very well secure, and that will do you well there. Okay, so still on researching the target, we're spending a lot of time on this because this is, I think, doing your work up front is very important. I have this rule that I often say to people. It says you pay now or you pay later, right? It's going to be one way or the other. Quite often, paying later costs you a lot more. So if you pay now up front, do your research, your life's going to be so much easier once you're actually in the exercise. You can't research when you're in the exercise. It's just you're moving too quick. All right, so now understanding their defenses. Do they have security guards? If they do have security guards, what kind of security guards are they? Are they armed or are they just token security guards? What kind of alarms do they have? If you're going in at night versus during the day, what does that look like? CCTV, is it real? Is it fake? Is it being recorded? Where are they? Can you avoid them? That's going to be a lot of questions. A lot of people have really good CCTV now, but there are a lot of bad ones out there too that just are not adequate as far as coverage. Access cards, what kind of access cards are they using? That's important as well. Type of door locks. If you're going to be picking locks, it's really nice to know what kind of locks they have. Patterns of life. This requires some observation. So you may need to do some physical observation for this. So movement, schedule, hours. What time do people go for lunch? That's a great time to come in and out of the building as people are transgressing through that area, right? Great sources for this are YouTube videos, office tours, that sort of thing. Employee social media, you can get on the news and take a look at that sort of stuff. Lots of stuff there. You just have to find where they're publishing it. Okay, now we want to start to prepare our pretext. We're still preparing, right? We haven't even set foot on the premise yet. We're still preparing. And we want to build our pretext on what was discovered in stage one. So maybe we're going to be a new employee or contractor. Maybe we're going to be a parking company attending to a maintenance or survey. That's a great one. Hey, I'm here to fix that, or I'm actually just here to do some maintenance on it. Or maybe just this is the annual check. Well, do they remember you from a year ago? Probably not. Was it even the same receptionist as a year ago? Probably not. So that's often quite a good one. Make your time span large. So maybe it's a 3-year check-in, right? Nobody's remembering 3 years ago. And even if they did, well, Joe's gone or Sally's gone. I'm the new technician, right? Maybe you're doing a new fiber run. That's quite a good one. Although I'd be careful with that. I like maintenance or survey much better than actually, coming in to do something specific like this, because then the pretext is a little more complicated, I find. Garbage or document shredding. This is a tricky one. I would come in and say you need to check something, because otherwise it'd be like, okay, where's your truck and where's your bins, right? Have a clipboard, and so you just want to check, make sure quality control is good, and make sure that the team is picking up and delivering properly. Something like that, maybe, right? HVAC technician is a good one too. You can bring some tools. Anything that allows you to bring a lot of tools is going to help you to move through the building with those and maybe utilize those tools, right? It could be a new trainer for the gym, a janitor, plant care technician. Plant care technician is great because you can just wander the building with your water bottle and spray the plants, right? But you have to be careful because reception would normally know who the plant care technician is or whoever's doing that maintenance. You could be a security guard, but I would not really recommend that, because now you get into that gray area of pretending that you're law enforcement, and you don't want to be anywhere near that, right? But I put that in there because I believe that bad guys could do that, right? You could, and there's actually been cases of this where I've seen people get caught doing that, and it does not go well for them. But that shows you that bad guys will resort to that. So you need to be on the lookout for that sort of thing. All right, so continuing to prepare our pretext, what you want to do really is look like you belong, of course, right? But then also you want to look very boring and predictably mundane, I like to call it, right? The kind of gray man thing where people don't give you a second look. They don't look and go, that's weird. I wonder if that's, and start asking questions. No, you don't want any of that. You want to be, almost make them blind to you, right? Is what you're really shooting for if you're trying to sneak in somewhere. And this would go for bad guys as well, like legitimate bad guys. I had a case once where a person just snuck in with a group of people, came in, lifted a bunch of computer equipment from the office, and then kind of got busted on the way out. but nobody could catch the person on the way out, and they just ran with a bunch of stuff. But coming in that way, nobody noticed this person coming in because they just looked like everybody else. They just wandered in with everybody else, right? So this happens all the time. Backup pretext if you get caught. This is a great one. I think that if you talk to social engineers, they will often say to never give up the pretext. And I believe that that's probably a good idea unless you're getting put in the back of a police car. But I think that if a normal person catches you, you can switch up your pretext a little bit, right? One of my favorite ones, which I would recommend, is, congratulating people for being suspicious. Hey, great, you caught me. Congratulations. I was hired to come in here and test your defenses. And then continue to have them help you get in the building so you can, file your report or something like that. Property management representative doing lock tests. Sounds very legitimate. Nobody has a special ID for property management, right? Maybe you get some business cards made. Locksmith hired to fix broken locks. So you can actually go and inspect the lock and say, someone called me. They said this lock wasn't working. I'm just here to fix it. Locked out of my office. Hey, can you let me in? I forgot my keys. Just a random employee that thought they would try this out. You could do that as well. Hey, yeah, we just thought I would see if I could get in without my card or something like that, right? Whatever you think might work for the occasion. But these are the sort of things that you could see criminals doing. Quite often criminals will not put that much thought into it and could just, wander in with the people smoking outside. That's usually the go-to thing, or coming through the back door. I think that's the other one, which we're going to talk about. All right, so now we've done the research. Now we're moving into reconnaissance. Now we're physically on site. And you'll find with criminals, once they get closer to the victim, they're going to want to be much more careful because they don't want to get caught before they've even done the crime, right? Of course. And that's what you want to do, is you want to catch them or put them in a position where they feel they may be incriminated even before they've done anything wrong. And what I mean by that is, if you have cameras on the outside perimeter of your building, which is catching traffic going around your building, that's what you want, because you want to be able to see people that are lingering, maybe that are taking photos of your building. And even if those are fake cameras, it's going to give the attackers the feeling of being surveilled, right? So they're surveilling you and you're surveilling them. And that's a good defense, I find, because they don't want their face on facial recognition before they've even done anything, right? So at this point, we know the company, we know the building, we know the people. So we've got a pretty good level of knowledge as an attacker. We're arriving on site to case the building. Now what I want to do is I'm going to start to take notes on everything that I looked at on the internet, and how does that compare to what I'm seeing with my real eyes in real time right now? Has anything changed? Do I see a bunch more cameras? Do I see a bunch more security guards? Do I see construction? Do I see new doors that weren't there before, or doors that were there before that are no longer there? Do I see any changes to the way the building works, right? Because there would be nothing worse than going in and then getting stuck there because that staircase is now no longer there, or the elevator is no longer there. So that's what you'd want to do. We want to trust our research, but we want to verify. So the age-old expression, trust but verify, of course, right? So that has never let me down. And we want to eliminate surprises, right? When we actually go operational, we want to just roll in there and not be surprised by anything, and just know almost instinctually what we're doing, where we're going, what we're going to say, right? And now while we're doing all of this, like I said, we don't want to expose ourselves to any CCTV. We don't want to stop and take pictures or get too close, get right up to the camera so it can do nice facial rec. We don't want to do any of that. So, and bad guys will be the same way if they're sophisticated. If it's just a, crash and grab, then not so much. But sophisticated planned attackers are not going to want to show up on your CCTV. So, of course, you want to make it so they do. Okay, now we're still on site doing our reconnaissance. What we want to look for, again, is new and changed doors and locks. Lock upgrades are hard to see sometimes, right? Especially when they're within the door. And so that can really be something that can catch you if you've already done reconnaissance and you think it's the same lock and you've come prepared for that old lock. Guards, CCTV, of course. New patterns of life is the other thing that I would want to take time on. And this is, again, what attackers would look at. New smoking areas, new eating area. And what kind of movement flow are we having, right? So if you have your watch a TV show where the bad guy's trying to get away, or even the good guy's trying to get away. They just kind of like go into the crowd, right? And so that's basically what people do, is they try to get into the crowd so they can just kind of like merge in, almost like a school of fish or a flock of birds, right? Same sort of thing, where it's like one extra person, you don't really think about it, right? I think if you have people at your reception and you have people coming into your building all the time, and if they're not carding through each time, they're just be able to walk through, having reception go, hey, who are you? If they can do that and get rewarded for that, I think that's very good. And a way to do that would be, oh, excuse me, can I help you? I noticed that you're not an employee here. And maybe they're a brand new employee, in which case they'd say, well, I am an employee here. What are you talking about? Oh, are you new? Oh, can I get your employee number or your badge or your whatever? Sorry about that. Let me show you how you can go through here, and just helping them get through once you verify they are legit. A lot of people are scared to confront people coming in, especially when they're drafting in behind somebody. But you really need to get to that position where, as a culture for your company, you're not scared to do that. And so new defenses, any man traps, alarms, new opportunities, of course, would be construction, any vendors that are on the premise, of course, and out of order areas as well. So areas that are shut down, you want to watch out for. Okay, now we're at the front door. What does the front door look like? Well, usually the front door is a mess, right? I do not want to come in the front door unless I have it, unless I'm feeling very confident, right? Our operation is going to be lengthy, complex, and so we want to be as stealthy as possible. I don't want people questioning my presence at the site, on step one. That would not be good. So what we want to do is delay anybody questioning us until the very end point, if possible. I can't count how many times where I've been doing a pretext and you get the suspicion very early in the game. And at that point, it's like they start talking, well, what's going on? Who is that person? Right? And that's just not good. So you want to avoid that if possible. If you do the opposite and people are like, oh yeah, don't worry, that's so-and-so. That's good, but there's a big risk there, right? So front door, highest amount of surveillance, typically, right? That's your man trap, that's your funnel. So you want to be careful of that. Usually there's active guards there. If they do have guards, one of them's probably going to be there. You're probably going to have reception there. You're going to have a lot of CCTV there. And it may force you to interact. It may force you to do your pretext at that point, which is fine if that's what you're going to do. And attackers may do that as well. Real criminals may do that. But they're going to avoid that as much as possible. If you can get past that, if you can come off as legitimate, then you could be in good shape, and that could give you the card to go through all defenses, right? If you say, oh well, I'm here to do an inspection, and reception goes, oh okay, well you're going to need this card to get up there. Or you say, oh, I forgot my card at the shop. Do you have a card to get me up there? Oh yeah, here you go. That could do you very well, but I think that would be highly suspicious as well. So another option on the front door is if people are using their cards to get through, and most offices, most modern office buildings these days, you're going to have a key card to go through. So if an attacker is sophisticated and they really want to be able to just breeze through without much resistance, then they may want to clone a card. And cloning cards actually nowadays is pretty easy, right? You can do a pre-visit as a door security contractor and put one of these skimmers actually in the card reader, and then you can come back later, pick it up. Some of them might even transmit wirelessly, which would be great. 5-minute job to do that. And there's usually no tamper-proof, tamper alarms on these sort of things. So you could take this chip and just install it. It's going to collect all the data for you, come back, get it. Then you can clone the card, come back, and have any card that you want. So you could be the president. You could be the security guard. You could be anybody you want with your particular card. And I love it because you can now walk in like you own the place because you do, right? And this is crazy, I think, in many ways, because the amount of power that it would give you. Every door in the building, typically, you'd be able to open now because you could literally be anybody you want after you've collected that information. So do your card readers have tamper-proof alarms? If they don't, like most people, maybe you'd like to do that, I think, because as an attacker, if I was getting into a building, especially a high security building, I would do this. you know, because it's going to be so easy, especially if you have a card reader on the outside. It's going to be so easy. I'm going to wear my polo shirt that has the vendor's name on it, my clipboard, and you know, maybe a hard hat or whatever else. And I'm just going to go do that, and nobody's going to question me. And if they do, I'll be just like, I'll put some cones up, maybe make it look all official. And yeah, I think that would be pretty cool to do. If you've done that, please let me know, because I think this would be pretty fascinating. All right, front door still. Now we're on point 4, the passive entry. Now we're going to get into the different types of entry, right? So passive entry, you don't have an access card. You just want to wander in, use your pretext. I love this guy. I love this guy for so many reasons, right? Big smile on his face. He's smiling. He's Mr. Friendly. Great pretext. You know, you can talk to me. I'm your buddy, right? But he's also got a bunch of tools there as well. So he's ready to go. If he needs to pick a lock, if he needs to do forced entry, he's got all the stuff there. I mean, he's got some stuff that's kind of useless, like his voltmeter and stuff like that. But, you know, looks the part. He's got his coveralls on. You know, he's set to go. I'd put a little bit of grease here and there probably, so people don't want to get too close to me. He looks too clean to me. But other than that, you know, great smile, set of tools, ready to go. I'd also have a big bag with me too that I could have more stuff in, I think. But yeah, so match the schedule. So if you've called in or something, maybe you've told them you're going to show up, make sure you match that up. Have a bag, yeah, with multiple costumes is another idea. So maybe you're going to wear something coming in, something going out. Props to allow excuse for people to open the door. So he's holding a good prop there, right? A bunch of wires. And who sneaks into a building with a bunch of wires, right? Almost nobody. So if you've got that, it looks legit. You know, like, hey, I got to go replace the thingamabob on level 4 because it's broken. It's dripping coolant. You know, if I don't get there in the next 10 minutes, you're gonna have coolant all over the place, right? And tools to allow for the covert and forced entry, like I mentioned. And then if this is successful, if this gets you through, you can stay in this mode. You can stay in this passive mode, which is probably the easiest, you know, in the smallest footprint as well as you proceed through. Once you get into, you know, the covert and the forced entry methods, now you're starting to leave a trail, especially on the forced, and noise and things like that. So this will be great if it works. And something to watch out for too, right? If you're owning a business, do you know all the tradespeople that are coming in, and do they have to do anything special when they come in, right? Okay, front door covert mission. So now we've gone from passive to covert, and you know, this is kind of assuming there's nobody there, assuming probably in the evening. These doors, we all have them, especially in warmer climates. This tool in the picture here is great for that. 5 seconds and you're in. It just goes through the crack, turns the knob, and the door's open, right? So this is riskier than passive entry because now you're actually, you know, lock picking kind of thing, right? And you know, there's various tools that you could use for various doors here, right? This is a typical one that I see that is super easy to do. And this doesn't look like a prohibitive tool either, right? It doesn't look like a tool that would get you put in jail, because most people will look at that and have no idea what it's for. It looks like some sort of toilet tool or something, right? So, you know, and it's very quick, very quick. You can have that door open in seconds, right? So if you have this door, there are things you can do to this door to make it much more secured, but most people don't. So if you think this door is safe, it is not. It is not protecting you, all the things you own or people from getting in. But there are things you can do to it that will make it much better. So if you want to know those things, just let me know. All right, forced entry. Now, this gets kind of interesting and something to look at. Look for a box like this outside of your building. Most buildings, depending on where you are in the world, it will look slightly different. But coming from a first responder's background, I can tell you that it's called different things in different parts of the world. But this, typically I would call this a fireman's box, right? And inside the box is all the keys to your building, so a fireman can open it up and get into your building in case of some sort of fire, right? If a bad person gets access to this box, they have the full access, almost like a clone card, right, to all of your building. And so, and people have dressed up as firemen and done this sort of thing before and have gone to jail, of course. But, you know, you could do this at night especially, right? So this gets you in if you can break this open, which I would assume people could. And there's probably an alarm. For alarms, you'll find, especially if every employee in the building has an access code for the alarm, pretty easy to guess what the alarm code could be for some of those employees, unless some sort of complex combination is deployed. But out of a 4-digit number, usually that's not going to be the case. And then if you combine that with a pretext, like maybe you are a fire inspector, or maybe, like, I wouldn't go there if you're doing this as an exercise, but bad guys could. So be aware of that. This box here gives people the gold standard entry to your building. So is this in an area where everybody sees it? Would attackers know what this is? I would start looking at that, right? What's in this box? Like, what does it give them access to in your building? Does it give them access to everything, or just maybe areas a fireman would need to go? That's something to look into, I would say. This has never been a huge risk, but I would say that it's less likely, but high impact, right? So if people did get into this, you have to change all the locks in your building if you realize somebody's broken into this, right? Or somebody else has access to this. So that in and of itself is a major headache. This is what some of the other boxes look like in other parts of the world. So sometimes they look slightly different. Sometimes they say fire department right on them. So take a look at that. This is a single point of failure for security. If somebody gets into this, they have everything, right? So actually at the 2013 RSA conference, a researcher publicized this possible exploit. I have not watched that, but I would recommend anybody interested in this take a look at that. I'm sure it's on the internet, and you can check that out. These would not be that hard to get into with a forced entry tool. All right. Let's take a look at now some of the forced entry tools you could bring with you, or some that attackers would typically use. This is basically a fireman's kit on what they would use. And let's start off with the simple stuff, which is a forced wedge, a metal wedge. This is nice because it allows you to get a bite on a door and just continue to bend that door out of shape until it comes off the hinges or bends enough to pop the lock. Very handy tool, very lightweight, easily put in a bag. Some wedge tip wire cutters. Of course, this is handy for fences. You can also manipulate small small screws or nails and things like that. Very handy to have. And then modified channel lock pliers. These allow you to basically unscrew some of these locks that we'll see in typical doors. And so very handy for that. Most people are not aware that you could just do that. And this now makes the lock on the door pretty much useless, and you can pull the door open fairly quickly. A shove knife. So this is very popular in the lockpicking community, and you can open a lot of doors with this. In the bottom right corner, you can see the picture of the lock that one of the locks that you can do with this, right? And this shows you, I'm just going to go through these fairly quickly, but shows you how the tool's made and what you use those different cutout parts for, right? Depending on the latch and the door, you can use different components of this knife. It's called a knife. There's nothing sharp on this. It's just the name for it. I think there's another name for it as well, but this is a very common name. So you can use this both on inward and outward swinging doors. Another great tool from the fireman industry is the New York roof hook. Very similar to a crowbar in use. The chisel tip allows you to do some very quick damage on locks. And it's a little more complicated to use, so you need to have some skill set on how you actually use it. But it definitely gives you a lot of leverage, and it's often confused with the Halligan. So that's something they're very similar. This one's a little more complicated. It allows you to do some very interesting movements with it, but it's kind of big. This is the Probar or the Halligan. This is a little bit smaller tool. This is really kind of the go-to tool for firemen when they're looking at forced entry and door removal. So you can use this to do many, many things. You can use this to create space in a door and leverage it open. You can use it to pop hinges. You can use this to pop studs out of a door if it's got the bar going across the back of it. Basically your go-to does everything tool. Very handy. If this is used with somebody who knows what they're doing, any type of door basically can be removed probably in seconds, if not minutes. And so while bad guys don't typically know how to use a tool like this, they do have access to pry bars, which are less effective but do the same sort of thing. All right, so that's some of the tools really quickly. Passive entry on the back doors. We did the front, now let's do the back. So if you've got a loading dock, these are ideal. Just wait till the people are occupied with loading a truck or something and just walk straight through. I would probably put on a reflective vest or coveralls or something, and then just take those off and put it in my pack once I got to a washroom with inside the building. Steel toes, things like that. They could stop you and say, hey, where's your steel toes? Sometimes it's very strict if it's a union environment or something like that. These are often great egress points to get out of there very quickly. So if you have a building, that's something probably to look at. Back doors often a little bit more enforced, right? So you can see this one. We've got a brick wall, steel door. It's probably, I can see 2 locks on there and a card reader, right? So usually not utilized very often. And so they're a little bit more secure, but also more private, right? So in some ways they're better. And it may offer a great way to get out as well. I think that's the other thing there. Steel doors is not uncommon for a back door, right? Much more secure because people are typically not looking at it. No bolt heads indicating any other restriction, right? So I don't see the bolt heads that I would typically see there if there was a big piece of wood holding it there. So we could breach that door in about 2 minutes, right? With somebody that knew what they were doing. If it's just a common criminal, still could do the door, and it may take an hour or something, but they could still totally do it, right? So don't think that a steel door is bulletproof, because with a pry bar, it is not. All right, attacking the hinges. So a lot of people will want to do this on doors. Always like, oh, pop the hinges, right? And yeah, sure, you could, but quite often there's problems with that. This is a great tool. You just kind of like spring loaded and you just pull it down and let it go and it pops the hinge out. That's the idea. In actual execution, it doesn't, I would say it rarely works that easy, but definitely an option for people. Criminals would probably want to do this before they did other more labor intensive things, because it's a small tool, you can conceal it, and it's relatively easy. So if you want to watch out on your door where your pins are, you can put some special things on your hinges that will prevent them from utilizing this attack. And they're like, I forget what they're called, but let me know if you're interested in that. I can send you the link to buy them. Very cheap, very effective, and it prevents this sort of attack from working. So, stud hinges is what I'm talking about there. All right. Back door still, so another steel door with steel frame. Here you can see the bolts in it, right? So we've got a deadbolt plus a lock plus the bolt heads in the door, right? So that indicates a drop arm. So there's a big piece of wood, big 2x4 probably behind that. So that's going to be even more work to break through. Totally doable. I'd say like 5 minutes with a professional, hour or something with a non-professional if they figure it out, but totally doable. And so you can see here the back of the door and the front of the door, popped out the lock, and then we can actually reach in there and move the rest of the stuff out of the way. So cut the lock, the deadbolt, discard. You can simply drive these bolts here straight through with the Halligan if we want, or we just grind them off. Attackers typically won't have grinders, so I would prefer to just bash them through. So 6 minutes with a 2-person team, we could do that. So that gives you a bit of an idea there on how quickly that would be. And yeah, so back doors, force entry still, so padlocks. If anybody has watched No Country for Old Men, if you haven't watched that first, I highly recommend it. This dude is scary. The tool that he's got there it's a little big and cumbersome for what he's doing, but the principle behind it, I think, is fascinating, right? You can go on to a hardware store, you can buy this tool. It's powered by basically ammunition. It's like a blank gun almost, or like a nail gun. I guess it's a closer comparison. And it's running a 22 caliber. You can upgrade it to a .27 caliber, which is, it's a small bullet, but it's going to pack enough punch to annihilate anything that's in its way, basically, as far as a lock. So this little guy here, you can buy for $229 American, and you point it at whatever you want to go away, pull the trigger, and it's going to go away. Whether that be a lock or whatever. and it's going to bust all sorts of locks for you. Fantastic tool. Put that in your gym bag, and it's going to get you through any sort of padlock. And criminals could if they knew about this, they could very easily use this on all your padlocks, and it's going to take them 10 seconds to get through that door, right? So if you've got a padlock on the outside of your building and that's your only defense, this gun in the wrong hands, 10 seconds, they're in. So you may want to add some layers there. All right, lobby. Now we're in the lobby. We've gotten in either through the back or the front, right? And it's like a bit of a man trap. So I'm not crazy about lobbies. If your lobby is set up properly, you want to have all these things, right? You want to have CCTV, security guards, empowered employees, develop the culture of asking questions, alarms, physical barriers, train traps, all that good stuff, right? You want to do that throughout your building if you can. Lobby. We want it to be either extremely comfortable entering, transitioning past, or not comfortable, and therefore we're going to avoid the lobby altogether, right? Hallways. So hallways are really scary, I find, because you end up being very close to people. And if the culture is such where they're going to ask questions of you if they're suspicious, then it can be very good to catch people in hallways because they have nowhere to go, right? So very good attackers will walk with purpose, right? Maybe they'll pretend to be on their phones. Oh, don't bug me, I'm talking. Or be looking at email or something to avoid eye contact. People want to make eye contact before they talk to you. So they'll say, you know, excuse me, before they actually say what they want to say. If you see somebody in your building, don't bother with that. Just stand in front of them and say, who are you? Or don't bother trying to make eye contact. Don't say excuse me. Just say, who are you? And stand in their way and let them answer you before they move forward. That'll be, it sounds a bit rude, but it's very effective, especially if they're a bad guy. Elevator. So this can be really good or really bad. There's some great YouTube videos by some talented individuals that talk about this in much more detail. But if you're in an elevator and you can own the elevator, then it could be a very good spot to sit and wait for your opportunity. If you have elevators in your building, you may want to make sure that your elevator has proper security around it. And I'm not going to get into that too deeply on this presentation, but that would include like who has access to the admin panel, how easily could someone control it if they had the key, which they will, because those keys are easy to get. And things like that, right? If an elevator is turned offline, would you notice it even? Are there alarms? Would your receptionist see that? Would the person be able to take a look at that? Or does that go to property management and you'd never see it, right? So I would definitely take a look at that. Elevators can be amazing for attackers. Stairs. So less people use stairs because they don't want to exert themselves, of course. So it can be really good. Attackers will probably want to use the stairs more than they would want to use an elevator, because an elevator, you never know who's going to get in, and most attackers don't have the sophistication to own an elevator, so they're going to avoid it. They're going to go on the stairs. So if you have an attacker trying to egress your building, just assume they're going to take the stairs to cut them off, right? Having CCTV in your stairs is good. A lot of crimes will occur in a staircase as well because it's fairly secluded, right? So that's something to keep an eye on as well. Exiting stairs, a good place for cameras as well. Code cards can get you to every floor through the stairs, of course, right? Executive office. Now we're actually in the executive office. Congratulations if you've made it this far. You'd want to probably close the doors and the blinds to allow privacy. Attackers will probably do this as well. If you've got somebody in an office that probably shouldn't be there, they're probably going to do this so that they cannot be detected. So watch out for that. If you've noticed an office that's occurred, the doors closed, blinds shut for a prolonged period of time, that may be something to check out, especially if you don't think the person's necessarily there. You know, that's going to be also a special ecosystem. So expect the unexpected, which would be kind of, you know, very clean, precision, tidiness, quality. So a lot of the stuff in there, it could be of a higher quality than the rest of the office. And your pretext may need to be able to change on the fly. So if somebody walks in, you know, you're going to be questioned, why are you in here? And why is the drawer open, right? Why is the filing cabinet upside down? So be ready for that. You need to be, this is an especially precarious position to be in an office like that. Filing cabinet. Filing cabinet's generally pretty easy to open. A nail file or paper clip typically gets you in 9 out of 10 filing cabinets. But because we're in an executive office, it could be a little bit more difficult to open, right? So we want to be a little bit more careful. It could be a higher caliber filing cabinet. So if you have a key that you can order online, if you already know the brand, maybe you just buy every brand you can think of. You can also tilt the cabinet over, and there's a push rod on the bottom that will open majority of filing cabinets as well. You could use a bump key. I think bump keys are a great alternative if you're going to go the covert entry way. Forced entry, of course, is you use that tool I showed you earlier, although that is extremely loud. So if you're doing that during the day, that is not going to go over well. You could drill the lock. Drill is not necessarily the most unusual sound. Impact hammer, of course, as well, which is going to be quick and dirty and make a fair bit of noise as well. So at this point, I would caution the forced entry mode, because it's going to be, if it's during the day, that's not going to be too good. So those are some options for filing cabinet. And once you're in the filing cabinet, that's the goal. We've gone from sidewalk all the way to filing cabinet. So congratulations. Now, we've gotten the filing cabinet. Now, escape and evade. And this is the part where criminals really want to get to as quickly as possible, right? So leaving the door ajar. If you notice doors are a jam, if you notice the classic tape over the lock part that comes out to locks in the door, you want to check for things like that. A lot of people would never notice that. Do you have a way to notice that? Distractions. Are fire alarms going off? Do you have a first aid event? Anything like that, I would be cautious of. Do you have a way to make sure all your resources don't leave their positions to go look after that? Because that's when crimes could occur, right? If you're going to practice this sort of thing, don't pretext as a fireman or law enforcement, because you could go to jail for that. So just want to mention that. And then moving crowd reduces risk, so they want to probably do that as much as possible. They may wait till a big group is in the lobby and moving out and just kind of go with them. That would make a lot of sense, so watch out for that. Dropping their equipment. So if they've used equipment to break in, they may not want to even bother carrying that out, especially if they stole it from somewhere else, or they can hide it and get it later, that sort of thing. So maybe in a common area, the lobby, the bathroom, toilet tanks are ideal for this. So are you doing checks in those sort of places on a regular basis? I know it sounds kind of weird, but if your toilet tanks, if you can lift the lid on them and put stuff in them, that's like little mini safes for people, right? So you want to check those sort of areas. And then your unarmed security guards, while I'm sure they're great and nice people, they're not going to chase down anybody that's leaving the building with a stolen laptop or whatever. So, I'm not sure how useful they are if they can't detain people. I know some countries that's more difficult than others, but I've seen that over and over again where that's a problem. And I also think that if you have videotape of the perpetrator in your building, and you think that that's going to get you an arrest with police just because you have a picture of their face holding a stolen laptop, that is not always enough evidence to prosecute. And so I just want to put that out there as well. So often people will let the perpetrator go thinking, well, I've got enough evidence anyway. And that can sometimes be a mistake, but something to think about. All right, so these are my references. There's a lot of different references there, a lot of areas I could have expanded on, but these are some of the references I would recommend to go take a look at if you're interested in any of those areas. And then that finally leads me to Q&A, which I would normally do with you right now, and you can ask me any questions and I would answer them in real time. However, since this is a recorded video, what I'm going to suggest is just hit me up on either Twitter or send me an email, and I would be happy to get into as much detail with you and hopefully provide you with some meaningful answers to help you on this journey as we learn more about physical security, and especially the forced entry component of that. So yeah, with that, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for joining me today. And yeah, have a great conference. And yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.